Hi everybody, Dan Anderson here, sitting with the great Jet, Sensei Benny. Just another day at Team Karate Center, as I always tell Master Fireboards. I had a couple questions I wanted to ask Sensei Benny if I could and get your response to it.
Absolutely.
I'd like to ask you about the basics, get your feeling about the basics and the foundation.
Well, you know what? Basics look fancy when you do them right. And basically, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how right you hit. So, you know, a lot of people want to do all the fancy jump kicking, but yet, you know, when I do basics, everybody says, wow, that, you know, they think it is fancy moves, this and that. I said, they're all basic. They said, no, that's not basic. I said, they're all basic. I just do them. I own them so well, they look fancy. And so the problem is with everybody, they have memorized knowledge. They memorize a lot of knowledge, as much as they can get, but they don't own it. And to own the knowledge, you know, you have to be able to understand it, the inner, the outer, and the middle ways of something. So that's why I stay with, to this day, I'm still with basics. My structure, right from the beginning, my foundation is about basic, you know, powerful basic, you know, a solid basic, should I say.
Of course, sir. It reminds me of the saying where you hear to not fear the man that knows 1,000 techniques, but fear the man that knows one technique and practices it 1,000 times.
That's right. And the reason for that, again, is because he owns it.
That's right.
And that one basic, that one technique, and when somebody owns it, because again, it's like anything else, we learn to memorize it, we learn to do it until we know it, we learn to own it so we don't have to think about it, and then we learn to give it back in the way we perceive it.
Oh, I love that.
And to do that means that this is how how I perceive it. So throughout my fighting and so forth, I recognize in the beginning of my career, I'm a jump fancy kicker back in the 60s.
Oh, that jump back kick, we
I'm
all love that.
all over the place. However,
Are you kidding me?
However, you know, I was about the fanciness because people like, you know, like the show. But when it came down to full contact karate and then into kickboxing, I recognized that my fancy kicks didn't do the damage as they told me they would. So I started modifying them and making them work, and I went right back to basic. And I recognized the basics are powerful when they're done right. And everybody thought they were all nothing but fancy technique. And I said, wow. I said, that's why I say, you know, basics look fancy when you do them right.
I agree completely. We always tell our students, you take a basic punch, but have a beginner do it versus an intermediate versus an advanced student. It's still a basic punch, but it takes on a whole new life of its own.
It's an understanding.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And an understanding means there's a right of earning. And that right of earning, but there's a responsibility behind it. You see, so
Sure.
just like anything else, you know, you give somebody a gun, you just don't give it to them. You show them, this is how it works. You take it apart, put it together, take it apart, put it together, and then they have to earn the bullets in those chambers. Because earning those bullets in the chamber, he's responsible for, or she's responsible for it. So, you know, the responsibility is powerful. And so technique is the same thing. You take it apart, put it together, but when they're doing it right, they're responsible, you know, because it's not, oh, I didn't mean to, no. If you hurt somebody, there's an intention behind what you're doing.
You know, when we go to a gun safety seminar, one of the first things that they'll tell you is that whatever you point this gun at, believe that you're going to completely destroy. And that's like you said, you own this technique. You have to believe that what you're going to do with it is going to have consequences. There's damages.
That's right. Just like anything else, you know, again, it's, you know, it's not, you know, how hard you hit, it's how right you hit. And the same thing is sometimes even with the gun. You know, sometimes you can pull a trigger and hit something and it's still moving. But if you hit it in the right place, it stops it right there. And there's a consequence beside it, because again, just remember, whoever you pointed at in this type of technique, if you take their livelihood from them, that means that you're responsible. If I hurt him, he can no longer work, and he has a family, that's on me.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, but people don't think about the consequences behind it. is, hey, I'm going to hurt this person. But I said, you know what? If your intentions are wrong to hurt him, remember, there's a consequences that if you disable him that he cannot no longer work and provide for his family or for himself, that's on you. So I always make sure that, you know, I said there's a responsibility for this knowledge of technique. You know, it's an earned right. It's not a given right.
Sir?
You know, again, you know, you can pay for technique, but you cannot pay for my essence. For what I love to do, you cannot pay for. And so this is the earned right. When I say fancy looks, you know, they look beautiful, man, when they're done right.
What would you say to the student who says, I'm tired of doing the basics, Sensei, can I learn the advanced skills?
Well, you know what, the ones that are saying, I'm tired of doing the basics, is then you're saying, you know what, let me show you another way of the same basic. Let me show you another view of the same basic. Let me show you another angle of the same basic. And then, you know, I said, through the windows of your eyes, you look at this basic like this. What if I showed you 4 other basics of the same thing? 4 other different windows of the same basic. And you say, well, I never saw those before. I said, you never asked.
That's what makes it advanced.
That's right.
Awesome.
Exactly. So, you know, so when students are saying, I want advanced, I said, well, you haven't learned the basic. Well, I already know the basic. I know you memorized the basic. You don't own the basic. I said, let me show you some other things of the same basic. And they said, do you really know it? And he said, well, not like that. And I said, there you go. Now you have other ways
Yes,
of
sir.
that basic. So, with that, you know, that's basically, you know, as I said, basic look fancy when you do them right.
Sensei Benny, thank you so much.
My pleasure.